there, St. John Nicholas, with my friendly bow, the feast of reason and the flow of soul.
Hello. On this episode of Feast of Reason, I'm joined by Professor Raphael Cohen-Almagor, a British Israeli political theorist who has spent decades studying one of the most difficult conflicts in the world. Professor Cohen-Almagor earned his EPhil at Oxford and later served as chair in politics of the University of Hull, where he founded the Middle East Study Center. By my count, he has written more than 20 books and hundreds of articles on political theory, media ethics, human rights, and conflict resolution. His forthcoming book, Resolving the Israeli-Palestinian Conflict, begins with the negotiations that led to the Oslo Accords and takes us to the present day, focusing not so much on ideology, but more on how negotiations actually succeed or fail. We're thrilled to have him with us. Professor Cohen-Almagor, welcome to Feast of Reason.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
My first question would be, maybe you could start by just telling us a little bit about your background and how you became interested in studying conflict resolution.
Okay, I was born in Israel. Israel is an autonomous country. It's totally abnormal. Look at the history. 1948, First War, 1956, Second War, 1967, another war, 1973, another war, 1982 until 2000, the Lebanon War, 2006, Second Lebanon War, and then many skirmishes, conflicts with Gaza until the ultimate conflict on the 7th of October 2023, a war that lasted 2 years, and now war with Iran. So this is not normal life. If you try to imagine life in Israel, I would say try to imagine your own life without one element that I think is crucial to anybody's life, which is tranquility. There's no tranquility. There's always pressure. There's always conflict. A lot of stress. In the 1980s, I decided to join politics because I wanted to do good on large scale. And I realized that the best way to do good on a large scale is to join politics. So I joined the Labour Party in Israel. And in 1985, it was, I think, that I had a VIP tour of the West Bank. Meaning one-on-one. I went with a guide from Peace Now, which is a movement that would like to promote peace in Israel. And the guide knows the territory as a palm of his hand. So he went around and I was horrified. I was horrified by what I've seen. I was horrified that we are doing such a thing to other people. I don't think that anybody would like to live even one day of one's life under occupation. And I joined the peace movement in Israel. And since then, I fight for peace. So I've been a peacenik before I became an academic. And I was involved in all kinds of projects and done many, many things. You mentioned that I wrote a few books in my life. And in 2013, I decided it's about time that I'm going to tackle this issue, peace, that evades us, also academically. Because until then, I've written a lot about many, many issues, but I did not intentionally, I think. I wanted to be remote from taking upon myself such a commitment because it's, for me, when I write a book, it takes me years. It's really a mission. The average book, I think, takes me about 7 years. So to take something like that in an atmosphere that is full of violence all the time, you have to have the stamina and you have to have the zeal and you have to have the opportunity to do this. So the opportunity arose in 2013 and I started to do the research for the book. And I don't like to recycle information. I find it a bit tedious to recycle information. My books are built on original research, meaning that when you open my books, you'll never see the content of my books anywhere else in the world. It is my research, and it's based usually on primary sources. Primary sources meaning that I'm not going to say to say what John Smith is saying about the topic and what John Parker is saying about the topic. I'm going to archives. I interview people. I do polls. I do questionnaires. This is the way that I conduct research. And I decided that this research is going to be based mainly on two primary sources. One is archive. And I've been to archives in London, Jerusalem, Washington, D.C., and Oslo, and on interviews with people around the table who negotiated peace. Up until now, I had more than 100 interviews with dozens of people from 10 countries and the United Nations. I interviewed presidents and prime ministers and foreign ministers and deputy prime ministers and royalties and senior negotiators and diplomats.
Mm-hmm.
And this corpus of hundreds of documents, the archives plus the interviews, gave me insights that I think not many people have. My intention in this book were threefold. The first one, I wanted to study and analyze all the junctions of peace negotiations between the Israelis and the Palestinians from Oslo 1993 until the present time. Secondly, I wanted to understand why negotiation failed, because so much resources, time, energy, money was invested in that of many very, very capable people, including several presidents of the United States, the superpower of today. How come that all of them failed? So I wanted to write about the keys for successful negotiation, mediation, and facilitation. And the last thing that I wanted to do is to review some of the proposals as how to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The title of the book, Resolving the Israeli-Palestinian Conflict. And then to offer my own proposal, how to resolve the conflict. When I started writing of the book in 2022. I was fortunate to be a fellow at the Woodrow Wilson Center in Washington, D.C.
Hmm.
And I sat there and wrote the book. When I finished the Oslo chapters, I saw that it's 25,000 words, which means that I'm unable to cover all the peace junction at the same extent that I covered Oslo. And instead, I had to pick and choose.
Hmm.
And I chose the three major junctions that I think were the most serious efforts to resolve the conflict. Still failed, but more serious. One is Oslo, the second is Camp David 2000, and the third are the negotiation between Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, and the Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Olmert. These two gentlemen met 36 times over a period of 2 years. And at the end of this very prolonged project that they took upon themselves and this kind of investment, they failed. There's no peace. So I've studied these three junctions, and there's one big chapter about the keys for successful negotiation, and one big chapter, the biggest chapter, is about the proposal, how to bring about peace.
Okay, and that's basically is an outline of what's in this new book. It's a result of the research you did specifically for it, but also what you've been doing over decades of studying. Yeah. Well, in all of that decades, all those decades of studying those negotiations, what's the most surprising thing you learned about the negotiating process?
Many surprises, but I'll just pick one. There are reasons why the peace failed.
Mm-hmm.
And the main reason why the peace failed was that there were people who wanted it to fail.
Yeah.
It's simple as that.
Hmm.
I call these people spoilers. People who came to spoil. People with their own agenda who commit to that agenda and not to peace. They oppose peace. And when I discuss the matter with prime ministers of Israel, several prime ministers of Israel, and I asked them how to deal with spoilers, they seem to dismiss the issue. They seem not to take it seriously to the extent that I take it seriously.
Hmm.
For me, it's a major consideration because these people have been very successful. In a nutshell, what they told me is something like, we have to pursue peace as if there's no spoilers, there's no violence, there's no terrorism. And we have to fight terrorism as if there's no peace process. This sounds very nice on paper, but this is like Marc Chagall, angels in the sky, pie in the sky. I mean, in
Yeah.
reality, it doesn't work this way.
Yeah.
It doesn't work this way because if you start serious negotiations in order to bring about peace, and throughout the process that may last years until it really materializes, there is increased violence, the people behind you are losing the zeal for peace because they ask themselves, if now that we are committed, my prime minister is committed to peace, and what we get in return is violence, just imagine what will happen when the process is going to end.
Hmm.
The violence is not going to decrease. Actually, it might be that it's going to decrease, to increase. I do not sign for this. I don't want this to happen. And what happens is then that those people become more and more desperate. They become angry. They become frustrated. And at some point, this frustration and anger is going to lead them to do atrocious things just to derail the process. And that's exactly what happened, for instance, with Prime Minister of Yitzhak Rabin, who was thoroughly committed to peace. I know that. But he dismissed the issue of spoilers. And he paid the highest price a person can pay, his own
Uh-huh.
life, on the 4th of
Hmm.
November 1995, because he did not take spoilers seriously. So I take spoilers extremely seriously. And for me, it's a zero-sum game. We cannot tolerate any spoiler. If you are committed to violence and what you want, your mission is to derail peace, then we should fight you. We
Hmm.
should fight with all the might, because otherwise there wouldn't be any peace.
Yeah.
So I think this is one of the major surprises that I
Mm.
had during my research, to see to what extent this issue of spoilers is not taken seriously, whereas
Yeah.
I think it should be taken extremely seriously.
Rabin was assassinated by a hard right Israeli citizen, not by a Palestinian. Isn't that correct?
Absolutely. You notice that I did not say his name until now, yet just only when you ask me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm with you. I don't want to serve them in any way that I can, and I hope that he remain in jail until the last day of his life. He was
Yes.
quite a young person when he assassinated Rabin, and I hope that he will finish his life in jail as well.
Yeah.
A horrible person who was committed to the settlement movement. And for him, the Oslo Accords was a nightmare because he thought that at the end of the day, Israel is going to give up some holy territories, biblical territories, and this is something that he could not fathom. And he decided to take the
Yeah.
law into their own hands, and Rabin refused to wear a security belt around him. He didn't have a vest, a security vest, as he should have, because there were warnings on his life, which he dismissed. And he was able to come very close to him, and he shot him 3 times in his back, and he died 3 hours later.
Yeah. It seems to me, and even more broadly than the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, that you have situations where the extremists at both ends are, in a sense, partners because they by continuing the cycle of violence, they can vilify each other, and then they kind of remain in power. Their uncompromising agenda is pushed. Is that what you mean by spoilers, or is it a little different, more like somebody like this Rabin's killer?
Well, he's certainly a spoiler, and he spoiled a lot. I think
Yeah.
that the Oslo process crumbled after the assassination. On the other side, on the Palestinian side, they have their own spoilers. And first and foremost, these are the Hamas and Islamic Jihad. These ideologies are fundamentalist political Islam. They don't recognize Israel. They don't recognize Israel's right to exist. They teach the young from Palestinian maps in which Israel is not mentioned. If you look at the map, you don't
Mm,
see Israel on the map, you see only Palestine.
mm,
They want to establish Palestine at the destruction of Israel. And we saw how dangerous they were, or they are, on October 7th, 2023, when on this horrendous day, they were able to penetrate Israel. And in one day, they murdered 1,200 people. Um, I think outside of the Holocaust is probably the most bloody day in Jewish life and Jewish history.
yeah.
And this act sunk Israel into a trauma in which Israel is unable to escape. And the cycle of violence increases, as we see and as we witness now when war is raging again.
Hmm.
And the Israeli response sunk the Palestinian into their own trauma. So violence breeds violence. That's the only thing that violence does very, very well. And I don't believe in violence, and I don't think violence is the solution. And I don't believe that hate is the solution. I think that hate is not only other regarding destructive, but it's self-destructive. It destroys your oneself. And
Yeah.
I believe in negotiation. I believe in compromise. I believe in concession. I believe in listening. I believe in debating. I believe in dialogue, and I believe in peace. And I think this
Hmm.
is the way forward that we have to walk. And I'm tired of seeing Palestinian children and Israeli children die. And I'm tired seeing these young men taking guns into their hands, and all the mission in life is to kill each other. I think this is horrible. And I'm
Yeah.
saying Israel is not a normal country because of this
Yeah.
violence.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a situation where you have two groups of people who believe that they have literally divine right to territory. Isn't that a fundamental part of this conflict? And if so, how does one get past the acceptance of these stories, these traditional religious stories, as literal truth and legal, and legal doctrine to get to a practical solution?
Let's talk 1 second about history, okay? Because I think it's
Uh-huh.
important. In order to
Hmm.
understand how to get to peace, we need to understand something about the roots of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The Jewish presence in Palestine, Israel now, starts about 4,000 years ago, when, according to the Jewish tradition, were able to go out from Egypt, from slavery to freedom. They crossed the Sinai Peninsula, the Sinai Desert, and they established themselves in the land of Canaan. It was the name, the biblical name at that time. And since then, for 4,000 years, there is Jewish presence in Palestine. There were times in which the Jewish presence was significant, and there was time that it was not very significant because every empire in the world wanted to come to Palestine. You look at the geography and you understand why. It's in the junction between Asia, Africa, and Europe. So the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the British Empire, they all came to there, to this point of the world. And when these empires came and the Jews didn't like to be occupied, they rebelled, and the result was horrendous because there was like a mouse roaring against the lion.
Yeah.
So the Jewish presence was distracted, and they were exiled oftentimes, but always was the Jewish presence. The Arab story becomes later, the 7th century. There was the Arab conquest. It is called, when the Arab Empire conquered a lot of territory in Asia, in Europe, and they also came to the Middle East, and they came to Palestine. And since the 7th century, there is our presence in Palestine. So we are talking about essentially two national movements, the Jewish movement and the Arab movement, who wants to have control over the same piece of territory. And until now, they're unable to find a solution how to divide this territory. And the Zealots, until now, were able to dictate much of the events to the extent that there's no peace. And what the message is that our existence excludes their existence. There's the language of living together, of coexistence does not exist. And it does not exist until today because occupation is not equal to Israel. When you are occupied, you don't have the same rights as the occupier, of course.
Mhm.
And this is a major problem. So we have to recognize that the two national movements are valid. The two national movements have rightful claims over this piece of territory. It's not that one side has all the rights in the world and the other side is an awful sort of a side, and we are the angels and they are the angels of death. That's not, I always tell my students, if you are looking for angels in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, go and read fairy tales. It's not here. There are no angels in this story because both sides have committed gross mistakes over generations and continue to do the same thing. So it's not a story about angels. It's a story about two people who need to find a common denominator to establish some sort of understanding between them to make difficult concessions, painful concessions, because peace is a precious commodity, and show me one precious commodity that doesn't come with a high price. And that means that both sides have to make concessions, not only one side, and the concession have to bring about a just resolution. For me, justice is extremely important. It's not justice only of one side. It has to be justice for both sides. And once people realize that this is what needs to be done, then hopefully there will be leadership who is going to rise and bring the people, to drink the water, and we are going to have peace.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess my question was about, you have these two groups of people, one of whom um, have what they consider to be a prior divine claim, and then the other group of people who claim they have the final and perfect word of God that tells them that they have the claim to this land. A lot of what we're talking about with these getting them to drink the water to make the concessions is to accept that they can't have the story that has been shared, that God has given them this land, and it's therefore against God if they aren't on it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I think that's the key for this is listening. I've studied both sides, the Israeli and the Palestinian.
Yeah.
And what struck me is the similarity between the claims. The Israelis and the Palestinians are making exactly the same claims without realizing that the other side is making the same claims as well. Both sides argue we are right, they are wrong. Both sides argue we are going to show them the light. Both sides argue they are evil, we are just. Both sides argue the only language they understand is violence. Both sides argue we cannot trust them. We
Yeah.
cannot believe them. And because there's no much communication between them, and also there's no much willingness actually to listen to the other side, we are stuck. So
Yeah.
I think the key is actually listening, understanding where they come from, understanding the logic behind their reasons, why they're saying what they're saying, and try to untangle this connection that they see, and some of Jews see also, that the only way out of this is violence. That's how they sincerely believe in that. The Palestinian, since 1948, chose time and time again, they chose violence as a way forward. And time again, they failed. I think it's a sign of lunacy to try the same method time and time again and expect a different result.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
tried so long with violence and you got nothing. Actually, if you look where you are now, you see that you've been weakened all the time.
Yeah.
Every war that started just weakened your position. So why don't you try something else? Try another way to bring forward a solution that is just for you, that you see as just. And I would say the same also for the Israeli government, especially the Israeli government today, which is a zealot government. The people who belong to the same camp of the assassin of Yitzhak Rabin are now in the government.
Yeah.
It's the most rightist wing Israel ever had. It's not a coincidence that since the election of 2022, there's a lot of violence in the country and around the country and in the Middle East. This is not a
Yeah.
coincidence. It's something that is embedded in the structure and the logic of these people. And we need to have different leadership, and then we have to come to the table and see the table as the arena where decision should be made and the future should be harvested, not in the battlefield, but around the table. That's what I want.
Are you familiar with Jonathan Haidt? He's an evolutionary psychologist, and he has this wonderful analogy that human beings are not rational creatures. We're more like a rider and an elephant. The idea is the elephant is your emotion, your intuition, and the rider is your reason. And almost all of the time, for most people, the elephant is going to do what the elephant wants to do. You're going to follow your emotion, your intuition, and the rider will rationalize what those things are. So it's very difficult for individual humans to be rational. And this is what I sort of take that and I have this concept of elephant herders, which is what great leaders are. And what great leaders do in my mind, and that's not just political, but all kinds of leaders, is they figure out how to set up incentive structures and the right environment so that the elephants will want to do the right thing. And I think, certainly on the Palestinian side, it seems like it's so driven by the desperation of the people. It's almost impossible to expect them to be rational and do something that's long-term thinking when they're in such a desperate situation. I think that the deprivation, the complete lack of prosperity creates an environment where it's just you just cannot expect rational action on the parts of individuals. They're getting triggered by these emotions. Would you agree with that?
Not necessarily. I mean, I see a difference between the people. I think that you're right when it comes to people.
Yeah.
When it comes to leadership, I think it's a bit different. I study very closely the reasoning of the Palestinians in these peace junctions since Oslo.
Hmm.
They seem logical to me. I
Hmm.
mean, the way that they conducted the negotiation, they made mistakes. Also, the Israelis made mistakes. But I don't think they were irrational, and I don't think that they were emotional necessarily. I think that they were trying to get the best deal that they can from a very dire
Yeah.
strait that they're in. So yes, there are the masses, and the masses often goes according to populist slogans without asking themselves the deep questions that you want to pose quite correctly. But when it comes to leadership, I think that they know how to handle their emotions and they know what they want to bring about. They're rational. but still they made mistakes.
I think we agree, actually. I would say Abbas is somebody who is definitely an elephant herder. He understood the emotions of the people, but was trying to create a situation where he could get them to follow him in the right direction, which is different from, say, Hamas, which is appealing totally to the hot emotions, the anger, the sense of revenge and all that. So I think to me, that's what a benevolent leader does, is try to create the situation where the emotions and instincts of the people get channeled into the right direction instead of the wrong one.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that.
I know you're a big advocate for the two-state solution, but there's a pretty broad range of ideas. Are there not?
No, I disagree with that. I don't
Mm,
want to tell you my solution. You have to bear with me.
okay,
For a very practical reason is, the book is going to come out by Cambridge University Press later this year. I don't know when exactly, between July and November, the book will be out. And I'm interested in people uh, to read the book and to learn from the book. And if I blow the whistle now and tell you what's the solution, maybe people would not go for the book. And I would like them to go and read and engage with the book. So I'm not going to tell you what the solution.
fair enough. Fair enough.
I want to tell you one of the guiding principle of the book and of my logic. Okay. Now I'm a political scientist, and more specifically, I'm a political theorist. I study ideas. So I studied ideas from Plato to Aristotle to Machiavelli, and then John Locke and Thomas Hobbes and Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill and Karl Marx and Lenin and Hitler and feminism and communitarianism and multiculturalism, all the isms. And I'm a student of Isaiah Berlin, who was one of the historian of ideas, the most prominent historian of ideas of our time, which gave me the zest and the wish to understand what is the most important value in one's life. Because different ideologists spoke about different things as the major thing in one's life. There are some people who believe that liberty is the most important thing. And you, as an American, I presume you'll be convinced that this might be right, because Americans cherish liberties. Some people believe in equality is the most important value. Some people say that tolerance is the most important value. Still others say the truth is the most important value. As journalists, they tell you that all the time. Jeremy Bentham believed that happiness is the most important value. And me, after studying this question for many years, about 20 years, and debating between me and myself what is the most important value, I reached the conclusion that the most important value is justice. So if there will be justice, all the other values are going to be satisfied. Now, justice does not have any color, it doesn't have any smell, it doesn't have any religion, it doesn't have any gender, it doesn't have any nationality, it doesn't have any race. It is tabula rasa. It's a person stripped of his own identity and trying to understand, okay, now that I know nothing about myself, what I would like to achieve for everyone else and for myself.
Hmm.
I think this is justice. So I cannot escape the fact that I'm a man, I'm Jewish, I am Israeli, I'm British. I cannot escape that. My instinctive affinity is to my people, to the Jewish people, the Israeli people. But when you are writing about peace and you want peace to be sustained, you want peace to last, then you have to understand that it's not only peace for the Jews, it's peace for both sides.
Hmm.
So you have to understand and develop empathy and develop recognition and read also what the other wishes are, how they want to achieve these wishes, what they're willing to do in order to achieve these wishes. You have to communicate with them. You have to listen to them. You have to sit with them You have to study their culture, you study their history, and you want to devise a plan that would be appealing to them. If it's only the peace for the Jews, then it's not going to be sustainable. Exactly the same way that if it's only the peace for Hamas, then it's not going to hold any water. We have to take both sides equally. So this is what I've tried to do.
Yeah.
I think that my proposal is the most just proposal. I think it's the fairest proposal. And as a very practical man and a realist, I think it's also a doable solution. But for this, you need to have leadership who has the capacity, the will, and also the ability to lead the people to peace. Because I claim in the book that peace between Israel and Palestine is achievable because I believe that every problem has a solution. I don't think there is I cannot think until now of any problem that doesn't have a solution. We are very creative people and we can devise solutions. This is not the issue. The issue is will. It's a question of will, not a question of ability. And I said that in order to bring peace between Israel and Palestine, something that you might think is unachievable, because when war is raging around us, when the violence is so toxic, and there is sustained violence all the time, I mentioned all the wars between Israel and the Arab state, then people come to think that the future is going to be like the present. This is a common sort of human frailty, that we depict the future as the present. But actually, this is a mistake. We can shape the future and we can make it different than the present, especially when we realize that the present is not such a glick. It's not such a big deal. We want to go out of this. It's not nice. It's not pleasant. So we can build a different future. And when people says, look at me as a crazy man, you're going to bring peace, you want peace, what are you talking about? It's not going to happen. I'm telling them, listen, could you have imagined in 1993 that there would be a solution to the Northern Ireland problem? Did you think that it's possible? Because what I heard all my life, it's impossible. And then the Good Friday Agreement came in 1998, and until now, it seems that the problem has been solved. Did people think in 1993 that South Africa is going to transit from apartheid to majority rule and democracy via peaceful means? I think the vast so-called experts thought that it's going to be rivers of blood for this to happen, but it did happen. In 2003, I was fortunate to be the Olof Palme professor at Lund University in Sweden. And Lund is an area that's called Skåne. Skåne for many, many years, hundreds of years, was in Denmark. And the Danish and the Swedish shed each other bloods with gusto for hundreds of years. Hundreds of thousands of people died as a result of that, until there were two leaders, Danish leader and Swedish leader, who said enough is enough. It doesn't bring us anywhere. It just filled the cemeteries. It doesn't make any sense. And they decided to make painful concessions. And since then, the Swedish people can take a train from Lund to Copenhagen. It takes 45 minutes. You pass the bridge, most of the time, 99% of the time, nobody asks for passport. And you can't even really see that you move to another country. It looks very similar. And the conflict between the nations, Danish and the Swedish, is longer than the conflict between Arab and Jews. So, and the conflict with the Irish, this many hundreds of years. So things can happen. And in order for this to happen also in Palestine, Israel, I said that there should be 4 preconditions. All of them are necessary. If one is missing, there won't be any peace. So what are the 4 preconditions. The first one, we have to have an Israeli leader who is committed to peace, who wants peace, and is willing to make the necessary concessions. I said peace is precious commodity, and therefore it comes with a high price. Israel should pay a high price for peace. Secondly, you should have a counterpart, a Palestinian leader, who is committed to peace and to make concessions. Thirdly, both leaders not only have the capacity to understand what's going on and to have the vision and the strategy of peace, but they also have the ability to mobilize the people to peace. Because if they lack any mobilization effect on the people, if they cannot steer the boat away from violence, then it's not going to happen. So they should be able to mobilize their own people. And lastly, there should be a time that is ripe. The time should be ripe. And what do I mean by ripe? I mean that both leaders understand that if they hesitate, if they are going to wait longer, they are going to lose. So they should seize the moment and do it now, because if they wait, then the result for them will be worse. We should have all four criteria for peace to happen. If these four criteria will come into existence, there will be peace between Israel and Palestine. Unfortunately, until now, one or two or even three of the criteria they were missing. And therefore, we are still yearning for peace. And this is why peace is so elusive.
Yeah.
It's hard to have all the stars aligned. I know it's hard, but I think it's doable. And there will be a time when people were fed up with all this raging violence and said, okay, we have to do something else. The children of Israel and Palestine deserve better. They should be children, not just to think also only about wars all the time, violence. They should be able to live their lives as children. Nowadays, the childhood, where is it in Palestine and Israel? When young children have to rise in the middle of the night to hear sirens getting off all the time, or to hear bombardments and airplanes and bombs. I mean, this is not reality. We deserve better. They deserve better. We can do better.
Yeah. Well, one thing I wanted to follow up on was your definition of justice.
Yeah. I studied the issue of justice from Aristotle onwards. And there was an American philosopher whom I regard as the greatest political philosopher of our time in the last 150 years, professor at Harvard University. His name is John Rawls. John Rawls dedicated his entire scholarly life to the issue of justice. So he was sort of a one issue sort of a scholar. He started to study the issue of justice in the 1950s. And in 1971, he published a book that for me is a seminal book, is one of the books that is going to go to the wall of the greatest philosopher of all time, together with Aristotle and Plato and Mill and Marx and all of them. His book is there, and in the same level, in the same influence. And I think it's going to last hundreds of years. It's going to stand the time. So what he asks in his book is, what is justice and how can we achieve justice? Because you put 10 people in the room and you ask them what is justice, they're going to give you 10 or even more answers. So first of all, how do we reach this issue of justice? And in order to do that, he said, let's think about analytical sort of position, a game, if you like. And the game is that you think of the issue of justice behind a veil of ignorance. We are all creatures of the circles of life that brought us about. We all, you are a man, you are American, you are white, possibly you are Christian or agnostic, I don't know what you are. You are a family man, you have friends, you at business, you at work, you're surrounded by all kinds of circles that make you Matt Ward. And all these circles influence you. Rawls says imagine your life that you know only the concepts, but you don't know your identity. So you know what it means to be poor, and you know what it means to be rich, and you know what is better. You know what it means to be handsome and what it's ugly. You know what is wise and stupid. You know what is white and black and other races. You know what race is. You are familiar with the religions. You are familiar with gender. The only thing is that you don't know who you are. You don't know whether you are man or woman. You don't know your religion. You don't know your color. You don't know your race. You don't know whether you're rich. You don't know whether you're handsome. You know nothing about yourself. And he asks, behind this veil of ignorance, that you don't know anything about yourself, but you just know the concepts, what are the principles of justice that we can agree upon? This is the question that was asked. And at the end of the day, he said, I think that people are going to agree about two things. Because, we are more or less comfortable, or let's say more comfortable, when we look at other people and we see that we are more or less equal to them. What we don't like is this, that we are here and there are so many people above us. This is something that we would like to avoid. So behind this veil of ignorance, because we are better off equal rather than this gap between people, Rawls said that people should, or he thinks, agree on two things. One is liberty. And by this liberty principle, it means that we all have the same equal rights. We have the same human rights. We're entitled to the same rights as everyone. There's no one who is superior to the other. And the second he calls the difference principle, meaning something that we are willing to interfere in terms of distribution of resources and the way that we situate ourselves economically to create differences between us. And he said that it has to be someone, the difference principle is going to hold only when the weakest parts of society are going to agree to this. So if it's not the difference principle it's not going to be decided by the elite, but actually it's going to be decided by all of us, including the poorest segments of society. And by poor, I don't mean only economically, but in all respects, the minorities and so on, they are going to agree to that. The example that I give my students is, think about a physician, a doctor, who nowadays, in this modern world, have to study for about 14 years to become a doctor, because it's 5 years of studying, then 2 years of stage, and then another 7 years to develop expertise to become a consultant. This is a huge undertaking, and what the physician wants to do is to work for society, not only for the white or for the black, not only for the Muslims or the Jews. Doctors, by definition, physicians by definition, are working for everybody, the welfare of anybody. And therefore, I think that even the weakest parts of society would agree that they should have more resources, economic resources, than other people who don't invest that much in order to be, a clerk in an office. So this is what John Rawls thinks, and so on. You can agree or disagree about the principles. Maybe you come up with other principles like Maslow, whatever you want. But I think the idea of the veil of ignorance is extremely important here, because most people, the vast majority of the people, are unwilling and are unable to enter themselves behind the veil of ignorance, and possibly both. Many people are not interested to do that. And many people don't have the capacity to do that, because they say, and then my identity is so much embedded in me that I can't, give away my religion to think about all equal religion, universal religion as a starting point. I can't do that. So you have to have some powers within yourself to have this. When I wrote my book, I tried to be behind the veil of ignorance. I worked very hard to strip myself from my identity as a Jew, as a man, as an Israeli, I wanted justice for all, and I think my book achieves that. I think so. Um, my book received compliments from Palestinians, and also it's been criticized by both Israelis and Palestinians. So that tells me that I'm doing something right. I mean,
Yes, yeah.
if it was all celebration of the Jews and all the Palestinians, I wouldn't like it. So I think that I'm demanding a lot. I'm demanding a lot from the Israelis, and I'm demanding also from the Palestinians. I think the Israelis should be kinder to the Palestinians simply because they are
Mhm.
greater than Palestinians. They are much mightier than Palestinians, and they can
Yeah.
afford it. And they can afford to be generous because they're much stronger than Palestinians. I demand more from them, but I also make demands from the Palestinians. And when I studied the peace processes and why they failed because both Palestinian leaders and Israeli leaders were not able to make the necessary concessions. They were making some concessions, but they did not make the enough concessions to be satisfactory to the other side. And this is why
Mm.
the other side said no at the end of the day. That's what happened.
Yeah. I think that the notion of identity, there's a sociological overlay to that too, because all of those, like taking myself as an example, right? I grew up in Berkeley, California, the son of a UC Berkeley economics professor. I've lived my entire life in a liberal bubble, a political liberal bubble. And so much of how I see myself and then as myself I see the world is shaped by this. I wasn't inoculated with a liberal vaccine at birth, but I had a little drip, drip, drip my whole life. All of these social cues, all of these ways that I attain social points within my group or my clique, I have a huge impact on my beliefs. So it's been a difficult thing for me, and I think it's a difficult thing for humans in general to question those beliefs as being how much are they shaped not by necessarily reality, but by the social structures and point structures that I have lived in.
Yeah, it's human.
I think that's where great leaders need to understand that and craft structures and institutions and policies that incentivize, the better angels of our nature, right? As opposed to inflaming the dark side, which sadly to me feels like is happening more and more.
Allow me, I'll tell you a little story. I think that the
Please.
major issue is to listen, is to be able to listen. I think that we've been given 2 ears
Yeah.
and one mouth for a reason.
Yeah.
And some people forget that they have ears and they like to speak all the time.
Yeah.
When I interviewed 70 something people, I think between 70 and 80. Some gave
Yeah.
me more than one interview. That's explained why more than 100 interviews they have. But from 10 countries. So you can imagine that Israel is only one. So it's 9 other countries there, including some Arab countries. And what struck me when I was doing the interviews is that the longest interviews they had were with Arabs. Arabs have a way to argue, which is very different from the Israeli way, and very different from the Western way, I should say. It's their way. They speak a lot, and they tell stories. The longest interview they had were between 3 and 5 hours,
Mm.
and I think one of them was in one sitting. And you need to have a capacity to listen. And if you don't have the capacity to sit down and listen, there won't be any negotiations. If you are not tolerant to listen, the negotiation will not be successful because
Yeah.
um, the Arabs will think that you despise them. You can't even sit with them and listen to them. This is a cultural issue. The Israelis on the other side are totally different. And I think it's for the Israelis, it has to do with their own legacy. Because for hundreds of years, for generations, Jews did not have a state. The last state that Jews had was in biblical time. And most of the time, Jews were spread around all over the world. And they were always at the table of someone who decided their lot, who decided their future. And they had to please that person, be it the Tsar or the prince or the king or landlord. They had to please that person in order to survive. So they did not question. They just do what they were told. And they kept their own ideas to themselves, especially if their own ideas negated the ideas of the Tsar. They should be careful, not express them openly. When Israel was built, it was built counter the diaspora. So the idea was to create a new Jew. That's what David Ben-Gurion, our George Washington, the first Prime Minister of Israel, said. We want to create a new Jew. The new Jew is the mirror image of the Jew of the diaspora. Whatever was the diaspora, we are going to forget, and we are going to be the opposite. So if in the diaspora we do not speak, here we speak. And not only that we speak, because we were denied our ability to speak as we think, we are going to express ourselves strongly. It's called in Hebrew to speak dugri, which means don't go around the bush. Speak direct to the point. And this is why Israelis, when other people don't know actually who is the Israelis, they think that Israelis are rude because they tell you in your face what they think. And sometimes it's not really pleasing that you hear the truth in your face.
Yeah.
So they think the Israelis are rude. This is not rudeness. I mean, you can think it is rudeness, but in their own mind, they just tell you what they think, because this is the idea of the new Jew, the Sabra. He speaks direct to the point. And when I was interviewing Israelis and I interviewed Palestinians, this was striking, the way that they just express themselves. The Israelis like talk, 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 and the Palestinians like. Sometimes they get to the point, and sometimes they get to another point. But you have to listen, and you have to listen to both of them. Now, it demands quite a bit for both sides to sit down and listen to that because of this cultural gap between the two. Can you think that one is speaking like that and the other one is speaking like that? What's going to happen? Surely there are going to be clashes. It's almost unavoidable that there will be clashes simply because the way that they express themselves. Do you know how many times Ehud Barak and Yasser Arafat met in Camp David? Can you guess?
How many?
How many? You guess.
12.
12 times. Okay. Wonderful. You are wrong.
I figured it would be.
Yes. They never met.
They never met. Wow,
they met
interesting.
for dinner.
Yeah.
And I think that once they met for tea. And sometimes Clinton would bring both of them, but not for serious business. Just what he intends to do, technical issues, whatever, setting the agenda with it. But, meeting of the minds, like you and me now, but in the same room, that we actually speak to one another and hear one another. They never done that. And you think, all this investment, you are going for a peace summit. What is a summit if the leaders do not meet? I mean, this is not really a summit, is it?
Yeah.
And all this energy and all this investment and almost 2 weeks to take the precious time of the American president, the most powerful person on earth, to commit himself. And then these two do not meet. And you know why they do not meet? Because Barak had no interest to meet with him. He met with him before. And Barak is a business-like person. He doesn't have the stamina. He doesn't have the patience to listen to all the stories.
Yeah.
So he thought it's a waste of time. And he saw meeting with Arafat as a present for Arafat that he's willing to give once he signed the deal, not before. Once he signed the deal, then Arafat is going to get his present, meeting with Barak face to face to negotiate business. You are shooting yourself in the leg.
I live on the West Coast, and my wife and I have some really good friends that are New Yorkers. And there's kind of a similar difference in that New Yorkers tend to be very direct. And the way that this couple, the way that they talk to each other, they say things to each other that my wife and I would be in marriage counseling for 6 months to resolve, the issue, where she'll just say, "You're an idiot," but it's just how they are. And it took us a while to realize that. So it's a solvable problem. And it seems crazy that, as you say, that something that important gets derailed just because of what amounts to kind of a cultural insensitivity, just not taking the time to understand what somebody means when they say something the way they say it.
Just to be patient and listen.
Yeah.
You know, people, especially when you are very, very smart, um, and you have an agenda, and you are more powerful than your counterpart,
Yeah.
what happens is that you tend to speak. Now, when people are negotiating and one side speaks a lot, that leaves very small time for the other side actually to express themselves. So the other side feels neglected and not
Yeah.
listened to. So it puts the other side in not in a very comfortable position. And if the other side is not in comfortable position, the willingness of the other side to make painful concession is going to be eroded because
Yeah.
you would say, you don't even listen to me. Um, and why people speak so much? Because that's their way to control the agenda. If they speak, then the agenda is theirs. It's a very nice way to control and get to what they think is the result. But actually, when you don't listen to the other side, you're not going to get to
Right.
the result because the other side is
Yeah.
frustrated. Again, the concept of justice. Justice
Yeah.
is justice for all. It's not just justice for one side. So you have
Yeah.
to think that when you're in a negotiation room, you speak your mind, that's fine, and you give room to other side to express themselves equally. Or, we are not saying that we are going to check minutes, percentage, whatever, but the other side will feel comfortable to express themselves. And if the other side takes more time to express themselves than you do, so be it. We all the images of our culture and our upbringing.
Yeah. Well, listen, I can't let you go without asking you about the current situation with the war with Israel and the U.S. against Iran. It's not directly a Palestinian conflict, but how do you see that conflict in general, and how do you see it affecting the possibilities for peace with the Palestinians?
No, it's no, no, no. Peace is a marathon. It's not Hussein
Yeah.
Bolt 100 meter. I'm a peacenik,
Mhm.
and to see so much violence, for me,
Mhm.
it's really, really painful. Trump is Netanyahu's dream.
Mhm.
That's really his pink dream.
Mhm.
Netanyahu has been saying the same mantra for more than 20 years, that Iran should be stopped. Otherwise, it's a menace not only to Israel but to the world. Um, and the thing is for Ted Netanyahu is that he's not stupid. He understands what he's taken upon himself. To fight the Palestinians is one thing. To fight Iran is a totally different ballgame. And he understood that this ballgame may be too big for Israel to fight. So Trump first presidency refused to go along with him. I mean, Bibi told him exactly the same things then, but Trump refused to listen. This time, for all kind of reasons, maybe because it's the second presidency, and even Trump understands there's not going to be a third presidency for himself, and he wants to put his mark. And once he did not receive the Nobel Prize for Peace, then he opted for war, and there were consideration of oil and businesses. And I should say to his credit that he did try. I mean, my dream, my wet dream was that ever will be an American president will come to the Iranians and said, I'm willing to negotiate with you. I'm willing to meet with you. I will come to Tehran. No American president said that in my lifetime. The only one who did that was Trump. But the Iranians did not agree. And with all this turmoil that is going on, with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, with Hamas, and Trump is not a fan of Hamas by any stretch of imagination. He hates them for all the right reasons, as I hate them. And Netanyahu found that now it's the good time to come and speak to him. Netanyahu visited the White House more than he visited his son in Miami. I mean, I think he's been there 5 times, and Trump came once to Israel. No other leader in the world see Trump so many times, and how many times they speak on the phone, God knows. It seems that I am in contact all the time. So he was able to influence him to launch that attack together. For Bibi, this is his wet dream. That's what he wanted for more than 20 years. Now, I'm the greatest critique of Netanyahu is not my cup of tea by any stretch of imagination. I oppose almost everything that he does. But when people ask me about Iran, and I've been saying the same things for the past 20 years or 30 years, I said, I don't know. I don't really know. The buck does not stop with me. I'm not the Prime Minister of Israel. It's one thing to be a philosopher, professor speaking at a British university. It's quite another to sit behind the Prime Minister's desk and make decisions that are going to influence your nation. What I do know as a student of history that I have to listen to my enemies very, very, very carefully. Because Jews have made a mistake once, great mistake, once in the last 100 years. There was a leader of a powerful country who told them, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to murder you. And they did not listen. The result was the 2/3 of European Jewry was murdered. 6 million Jews went out in the Holocaust. This is a lesson that we have to remember. So we have to believe our enemies. We have to listen to them carefully. Iranian leaders said that they want to wipe Israel out of the map. They said that. Mm-hmm. And we also know that they were intent to enrich for peaceful or God knows what reasons, motivation to enrich uranium. And we know what we can do with uranium when it is enriched. So when you have a leader, a powerful leader of a very powerful country, 90 million people, that is threatening to smash you and to throw you to the sea, to destroy your country, and at the same time is pursuing nuclear power, I think that every Israeli leader should be very, very careful and should be very intent to understand what that leader wants to do, actually. And I understand Netanyahu why he is very suspicious of the Iranians and their motivations. So I cannot blame him for doing this. But, the entire logic of only violence and more violence and more violence and more violence, this is not attractive to me because I believe it differently. I want people to go back to the table. I want people to listen to each other. I want people to speak up. I want people to make concessions, both sides. I want people to agree on things and to settle the differences not through airplanes and bombs and destruction and missiles, because there are better ways and we should know better because we have brains and we can do better than just violence. My heart goes to the Israelis and my heart goes to the Iranians. Both of them don't sleep very well at night. Last year I was a fellow at the best place in Israel for academics, the Institute for Advanced Studies at AB University. This is where I wrote my book, Resolving the Israeli-Palestinian Conflict. And during this horrific year of 24-25 academic year, I endured 2 wars. One, the war with Hamas, and the second, 12 days of war, the first Iranian war between Israel and Iran. And I can tell you the war with Hamas depressed me a great deal, but did not touch me physically because they didn't have the capacity to fire rockets on Jerusalem. And maybe they didn't want to because there are many Arabs in Jerusalem. Iranians seems not to care about all these issues, the mixed city of Jerusalem, Arabs and Jews. So they bombed also Jerusalem. So the 12 days of war, they bombed me. They bombed Jerusalem, and I was in Jerusalem. And I can tell you, this was horrific. It's horrific. It's not the same scale as rockets. A missile is not a rocket. It could be half a ton of destruction that falls on you. And when it falls on you, it eradicates not a building, it eradicates half of the neighborhood. It was horrific. I suffered from trauma as a result of that. So now thinking that my fellow people in Israel are now suffering this again, and for how long? Nobody tells them even for how long. We don't know. Trump one day says the end is near, and the other day says maybe another 2 weeks, maybe another month. I don't know how people can endure this horrific existence when they don't sleep at night. They're then expected to go to work.
Yeah.
So I think that we should do better, and I think that the war should end as soon as possible, and there should be serious attempt by everyone who has a say in this tragedy should
Yeah.
be involved and put the Iranians and the Americans and the Israelis around the table and not move from that table until we're going to see white smoke. So this is
Yeah.
a plea not
Mm.
only for the Americans and the Israelis, for the Iranians, but it's also a plea for the Chinese and for the Russians, because the Iranians listen to them. So they should be involved, because otherwise it can go out of hand. You know, people ask me, is it possible to have a third world war? And my honest answer is, I do not know. And when I'm listening to myself, when I said these words, I do not know. And I know what might be the result of a third world war. For me, this is catastrophic.
Yeah.
This is insane.
Yeah.
So we should stop this.
Yeah. Well, here's hoping. Hey, where should people go to learn more about you and your work and to get in line to get the answer that's going to be in your book? That is for now secret.
The book is called Resolving the Israeli-Palestinian Conflict, published by Cambridge University Press. It will come out sometimes between July and November 2026, and it will be available on Amazon and in the best booksellers in the United States and elsewhere. On Amazon, you can also find the majority of my books, not all of them, because Amazon does not have my Hebrew books. I publish some books in Hebrew, but it has majority of my books published in English. So you can find also my work on other issues that troubled me. I wrote 5 big books. I wrote about 20 books, but 5 big books in my life. The first one is The Boundaries of Liberty and Tolerance. That is very relevant today because it is about what I call the democratic catch, the catch of democracy, that elements within democracy are coming about to destroy democracy. So how do you deal with people who want to destroy democracy from democracy? I developed a theory, the boundaries of liberty and tolerance. And then I examined 2 case studies, one Skokie in the United States, the did not march of the Nazis in Chicago, in Skokie. And the second is against Meir Kahana, the rabbi who came from Brooklyn, New York, head of JDL, Jewish Defense League, to Israel, immigrated to Israel and established Kach. And this is a racist, religious, autocratic party. And he was elected to the parliament. So my book is about that. That's my first book, big book. My second big book is about the right to die with dignity. It's in medical ethics. My third large book is Just Reasonable Multiculturalism. That was published by Cambridge 2021. And it's about the conflict between liberalism and multiculturalism, and ask the question, when should liberal democracy intervene in culture, in society? That these books are available on Amazon. And go and read. And if you want to reach me, I'm available. I answer all people who approach me, provided they speak to me in a decent way. If they curse or whatever, I'm not stop listening. But I hope you gather until now that I value listening very, very much. And it never happened that someone wrote to me and I did not answer, as long as it's done in a civil way. So please go ahead and by all means read, enrich yourself, and learn.
Yeah, that sounds like some reading I need to do. The book on multiculturalism in particular, I think has got to get in my reading list real quick. Well, listen, I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. It's been a really great conversation, and perhaps we'll connect again when it gets a little closer to the release of your book. So thanks again, and we hope to speak again soon.
Thank you. Thanks very much.